It's an honor to be asked to address you today as an expert witness to the value of your profession. I'd like to talk to you about when hope and reality collide. That's an ominous word, collide. It's defined as a forceful impact, a violent contact, or crash. Often, when we hear about a collision, it's preceded by the words, head on. Meeting the ground, backboard, or a sandbar with your head is the definition of collide you might see in a quadriplegic's or paraplegic's personal dictionary. My personal dictionary includes a picture of a motorcycle, which may be all too common. You will hear it a lot in your chosen field. Traumatic injury is often the result of a collision. That's why I'm sitting here. But what caught me off guard was that word entered my life again only weeks later to describe the conflict I had to address. The realization and acceptance of the loss of movement in my body collided with a determined, disciplined 24-year-old man. A young life which had been so full of hope was now changed forever. I was ready to give up. Hope? Did the reality of my circumstance even warrant speaking the word hope? Well, it did. But hope and reality were going to have a violent contact in the days, weeks, and years ahead. Physical therapy was an important part of the 3 months I spent in the hospital. And as you can imagine, I continued rigorous therapy when I returned home. I was used to strenuous workouts because, as Dr. Gordon mentioned, I was a swimmer. At one time, I was ranked 9th in the US and 13th in the world. That was the 1976 Olympic year. Anyway, I didn't get to an elite swimming level hanging on the lane lines, which is what we swimmers do when we're tired. Swim workouts were strenuous, sometimes tedious, and vital to my advancement. Certainly, I was primed for what was ahead. If I was going to gain any movement, I'd have to treat these sessions like a workout in a pool or on dry land. I met my physical therapist at White Memorial Hospital. Her name was Kathleen O'Connor. Prepare for confronting a live person, I thought to myself. Perhaps that was defensive on my part, but the reality was I was going to be spending a lot of time with someone who was an expert in movement, but who only had an intellectual understanding of my disconnect. I had no sensation in parts of my body, yet my mind had never stopped moving. There were parts of me that weren't alive, as it were, but I was alive. The synapses in my brain were communicating just fine. Movement, in all its glory, had not ceased entirely. So, for the therapist, having knowledge of human anatomy and recognizing the anatomy of movement only encompasses the immediate landscape. The terrain you will encounter in your practice is much more vast. You've probably been trained to be a bit of a psychologist to understand your patient as a person. But I'm talking about also understanding yourself. Assessing the gifts you are given is a plus. You chose a service profession. That says a lot about you already. But your desire to serve can be complemented by being a good listener or having a cheery disposition. Are you funny? Do you possess a moderate gift of gab? Are you a good motivator? Whatever they are, understand and embrace your gifts. My physical therapist, Kathy, was gifted in many ways, but the one thing that stood out was her compassionate determination. She was indeed prepared for a live person, a scared person, whose mind was analyzing the road before him, seeing reality as a bus barreling right for that bicycle that was hope. It doesn't take a PhD in physics to know who wins that collision. Kathy already possessed a keen awareness that this journey was not going to be just about the physical. That understanding gave me comfort and helped me trust her. Now, I believe the patient has a responsibility also. Though uncertainty, crankiness, self-pity, weariness, and doubt all made themselves known at various times, I was willing to receive my therapist's wisdom, knowledge, and care. And because I was expecting her to see my humanity, I had to see hers as well. The reawakening of my limbs began, as I mentioned, in rigorous daily sessions of whatever was prescribed. It was helpful to respond to her like I would my swim coach, the legendary Peter Daland. In fact, Coach Daland came to visit me when I was feeling overwhelmed and said, "Mike, you have the strength, you can do this." My rehab coach, Kathy, adopted the same encouraging mantra. Together we took steps forward and inevitably steps backward. And how you respond to those steps backward will be instrumental in your effectiveness as a practitioner or researcher. For you and for the patient, small triumphs will be noteworthy and sometimes more so viewed from the shadow of a setback. That is a reality of the path to restoration from injury. Kathy recognized that reality and hope were wrestling with her too. I think that made her more courageous. What I needed someone who, when I felt like giving up or hanging on those lane lines, she would have the courage to say, "Come on, you can move that leg another 2 degrees," and say it assertively and yet gently. You know, we all understand that combination. Confident, assertive, yet gentle and encouraging. Like Atticus Finch. You know Atticus Finch, To Kill a Mockingbird? Well, it's a good thing you're not English majors. As my therapy progressed, our mutual trust carried us beyond perceived limitation and into uncharted waters. This was both thrilling and terrifying at the same time. You see, my doctor had notified me that I was not going to get any better, that based on the overall science of neurology and the type of injury I had sustained, I had reached my optimum recovery. Was I ever going to stand on my own? No. Was I ever going to walk, even with the aid of braces and crutches? No. But courageous, determined Kathy thought that I hadn't reached my potential. That what she had seen me do, day after day, what I revealed in my spirit in response to her encouragement, was more than enough evidence that there was more to be accomplished. One day she said, "Let's try this." The "this" she was referring to was standing. We were going to try and navigate those uncharted waters. We were going to lightly tread on the fine line tempering reality and hope. Her belief in me was inspiring, and I didn't think of her as reckless or at odds with my prognosis. I thought of her as an accessory to my liberation, to helping me find movements away from thoughts that were self-defeating and toward a mindset of possibility, to helping me find physical movement that meant all of me could take up space again. She set me up in front of the parallel bars and watched me rise to my full height. I was standing, in large part due to her perseverance and, yes, her hope. Fast forward 35 years, and I find myself back in a physical therapist's office. I had some pain in my shoulders, and it turned out to be severe tendinitis. You see, not too long after I stood up with my therapist on that memorable day, I had also been able to get back into the pool and swim, to take up space again in water. Chlorine had never smelled so good. But with the years of repetitive movement, coupled with the reality of aging, my shoulders just gave out. It was tough. I wasn't able to swim for 6 months. Also, you are aware of how important it is for me to maintain my upper body strength, to be able to crutch myself through my house or lift myself into my car. My freedom depends on a mobile upper body. I met this physical therapist at Huntington Rehab. His name was Jimmy. We set a schedule, and though I was presented with a much different workload, Jimmy didn't assume that because I was in a wheelchair, all this rehab stuff was old hat. He assessed my injury, he worked diligent to help me be pain-free, and listened to my concerns. I might be a bit more impatient these days, but with his help, I could eventually move my arms up and back and forward. Once again, a physical therapist was a capable, willing accessory to my liberation. One of the tenets of the oath you take today is to exercise all aspects of my calling with dignity and honor. You've accepted this calling that will bring you in contact with and in service to people who rely on your expertise for their well-being. You bring the science and the other tangible components that make you unique to what could be a week, month, or year-long journey. Your challenge will be to address each patient with dignity and honor when they bring you their physical pain, their uncertainty, their determination, their willingness, their frailty, their reality, their hope. Reality and hope. I couldn't shed myself of either. To not live in reality would mean living in fantasy, and to live without hope would mean to stop living. Those are not viable options. Reality stares you down while hope whispers in your ear, and now they have become earnest partners. In other words, sometimes reality may still feel like a barreling bus, but an intuitive and compassionate therapist can help a struggling patient put hope in the driver's seat. Thank you very much.
That was an extraordinary speech, Mike, and thank you very much. Thank you. I'm really have no words to describe, so thank you. Let me just present you with this small token of our gratitude.